Come on up. Please welcome Elliot from Profound. We've got Jeremy Fain, the CEO of Cognitive, and we have Matt Drinkwater, the CEO of Bright Mountain. Welcome. This is my first all-male panel. This is going to be exciting, and I expect there will be some opinions shared today that some may not agree with. But I actually have to, before we kick off with our first question, I always start the day with fun facts. I'm not going to reread all three of them, but because Jeremy and I had an interesting conversation about CES, I will let you know that today, in 1967, was the first CES. Now you know. There's no connective tissue to that in this conversation, but a funny conversation we just had. Okay, let's kick off. I did a terrible introduction to all three panelists, so what I'd ask them to do is just quickly say what their company does, and this is not marketing time. This is time for you to succinctly give everybody a frame of reference where you're coming from. So, Elliot, we'll start with you.
So I'm Elliot. I had a partnerships at Profound. Profound is an AI search platform and tool, so we help brands understand how they show up in ChatGPT, Gemini, and any answer engines.
Jeremy Fain, co-founder and CEO of Cognitive, and Cognitive is a deep learning advertising platform. We founded in 2015, and we apply deep learning to the big data of human user journeys and how that can be connected to predict consumer behavior.
I'm Matt Drinkwater, CEO of Bright Mountain. Bright Mountain is a technology company that is bridging consumer research and insights with strategy and media. And we built a platform that allows brands and agencies to access always-on insights and make sure they're connected through marketing workflow to combat some of the fragmentation they experience.
Quick question for everybody in the room. Even you in the back, you're not even going to possibly get away with not answering this question. How many people use AI in their workflows in some way, shape, or form today? How many people are sick to death of talking about AI at Cannes? Okay. The reason I'm saying that is I think we were talking before the panel is that AI in many ways is, and it's becoming part of the fabric. But for today, we're going to talk about how each of these gentlemen are attacking AI in a different way or utilizing AI in a different way and what it means for our industry because we're here at Cannes and that's what we're here to do. So we know this, AI changed marketing. What's the biggest shift marketers and advertisers still haven't fully wrapped their heads around with AI? And I'm going to start at the end. Matt, don't share your hot take yet, but I'd love for you to start.
Yeah, I think just to start, we generally are positioned a little bit upstream. We're generally talking to brands about consumer intelligence and really understanding who is their audience based on research that we develop for them. And I think there's a lot of conversation right now about synthetic and we call that the Claudience. So we really help brands try to figure out what is a Claudience and is that a viable option or not. We obviously generally believe that's not a great approach to building audiences. You can absolutely leverage AI as part of that solution, but if it's foundational, you're probably going to lose the way. And so what we've seen is sort of the fear, fascination, fatigue journey around AI happen very, very quickly. And we're almost in a fatigue stage where brands have gone out and tested some of these synthetic audience tools, and it hasn't quite delivered on their expectations. And so they're a little fatigued. They're still curious, but they're asking, what do we do about this? We want this to work because it is more cost effective and it's much faster, which is great, and they're looking for that, but it has to have verification, it has to have veracity and rigor around it for it to be effective.
I know, Jeremy, you never have an opinion, so do you have one maybe?
I think that the problem today with AI is that there's so much of it, and it is confusing to everyone, but especially in the marketing space, there's not a lot of understanding of what fundamentally AI is, and I think that's something that we try really hard to help with. Claude and these things, they're taking what's published. So they're just reading a bunch of stuff that's published. As we all know, as marketers, things that are said online aren't always accurate. They may be guesses, but they're not always accurate. What Cognitive has been able to do and sort of show marketers is that we can take the reality of the situation. So a lot of the time early on in our company, we would go to an advertiser and they would say, okay, we need you to help us reach males 18 to 34. And we would say, why? And they're like, because we're told that's who buys our stuff. Excuse me. And we would say, well, why don't you want us to find just people who buy your stuff? And that, I think, is an eye-opener. They don't come to us with a hypothesis anymore. We come to them, we take a look at who's actually buying their things. We use deep learning to build algorithms around how to find more of those people. We then provide insights into what that algorithm is doing and what people it's actually seeing. And we always deliver a new cluster or a new idea of their customer to them. And I think that is the big change. You know, we just had an article with Fanatics, and they had that sort of same mentality, like these are the bettors, these are the people who bet a lot. And the data told us a totally different story. And we helped them identify those, update their creative, the virtuous circle. And I think that's what AI can do, is take what's really happening, these actions are real people, and let's find out how to improve that piece.
And I think in your world, Elliot, that probably really resonates with you. Do you want to expand a little bit on your thinking there?
Yeah, I think, what we're seeing is, we work with a bunch of the Fortune 500. Everybody's using, Claude to one-shot, different, experiments within their work stream as a marketer. They're also using tools like Profound, but also like SEMrush, Adobe, et cetera, and all their data kind of lives in different areas. And so what we're trying to do is, we've kind of created this role called the marketing engineer. And essentially it's like somebody who sits across sales, marketing, et cetera, but natively is a marketer, so has the context and understanding of what good marketing looks like, but is able to orchestrate across all these tools. And so we've seen companies like Google, Figma put out JDs for this marketing engineer role. And so I think as things as the platform shift is happening, I think we're seeing companies start to figure out what the new org looks like and what that new role looks like. That's going to sit across all these tools.
You look like you have something to add to that, Matt.
Yeah, I think Jeremy touched on something that's pretty near and dear to us as well, which is that relatively generic brief that arrives on his desk around men 18 to 34, and that is one of the things that we're trying to solve. And the reason that happens is most brands are conducting some sort of more sophisticated audience segmentation work. But what happens is that gets passed, and it gets passed, and it's a classic game of telephone, and it gets diluted, and by the time it gets into a brief, it's been proxied, and then by the time it gets to the media platform, it's been proxied again, and you get a real dilution. And so it's no surprise that by the time the media hits the air, you have no idea if it's hitting the target audience. It's almost certainly not hitting the target audience. We have a front row seat to that because we run a media agency. And so we're just trying to straighten that line a little bit because you're not going to get a good result, and you're wasting media along the way. And so we're trying to provide some of those tools. I mean, we're all attacking it a little bit differently, but we're trying to provide some of those tools to keep connectivity across that workflow.
I want to talk about that then. You talked about the Fanatics example, Jeremy. The signals you're looking for, can you talk, because I think that goes to what you're saying too. So the signals has to be some of the connectivity. What are you looking for? What are you seeing?
So the other paradigm shift that we're trying to talk to the marketers about is that traditionally ad tech has grown up in a way where you build technology to what was possible. And generally that was some kind of return on ad spend or cost per acquisition. But it's across multiple media channels, and there's a lot of different things that make that a proxy to your business. And one of the things that we're able to do now with deep learning, because it can be customized and each algorithm can learn different things and answers to different questions with the data, whatever data we feed it, it can answer that question. And so for our clients, we're trying to help them understand that they can move beyond simple online proxies to drive actual business KPI algorithms. So some of our bigger clients, they run their company, they run their investment on incremental LTV lift, okay? There's no DSP out there that allows for that. There's no agency that is helping their clients do that because that's inside of the business. To Matt's point, like it's inside the business, then it gets translated into something else. Then the agency's like, I can do this, and then by the time you get here, maybe you're getting 15% of what you want. And we can now integrate with an agent, an advertiser. They can pass us on every conversion an LTV score, let's say. We can build all of the algorithm to look for more and more of that and optimize that for their business, and that passes directly into their revenue and their investment. So that's what technology can do, AI can do today. I think that's a big leap forward for marketers.
I want to jump to something you talked about, Elliot, when we were talking before the panel today, and talking about how folks are showing up in the LLMs and decisions companies have to make now as to whether they're going to maybe open up part of their world. You don't have to name names, but that they previously hadn't exposed because they are potentially getting way down the list from a search results standpoint because they are gated content in a lot of ways. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, I think we've worked with a bunch of publishers like Forbes, Business Insider, et cetera. And I think this question comes up often of, I am, as a premium publisher or content producer, gating my content. And that is the original business model I had. So like people would come to our site, they'd pay a subscription fee, and then they would unlock content. But I think in this new paradigm where people are doing research and diligence and trying to pull in answers really quickly from ChatGPT, if you are still blocking that content to the crawler bots, the scraper bots, et cetera, you're effectively losing that discoverability layer within AI that we're talking about. And so like it's really a business decision that has to be made by these publishers and content producers, which is like, do I lean in with this paradigm shift? Do I open my content up? Do I open my .com up? Or do I just kind of stick with my old ways and block my content? Try to go a little bit more premium. But yeah, it's ultimately on the publisher.
So I have a follow-up question. So does a publisher ungate the agent bots, the LLM bots, but still gate the consumer? So as the consumer goes from this discoverability, they still end up at a gate, or what's going on?
I mean, it depends on take a Business Insider, for example. You go to a blog or like a listicle or whatever. It's like you're gonna scroll and then you get blocked, right? So like those articles probably aren't gonna show up within a ChatGPT per se, but like those publications have to go out, probably broker a direct deal with one of the frontier labs, with one of the models, get their content directly fed into the models. Like kind of happened with Reddit. Reddit had a lot of lawsuits between OpenAI, et cetera, and now they've kind of broken those deals.
That's how all LLMs know
Exactly.
is Reddit.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly, and LinkedIn too, and a couple other sources, Wikipedia, et cetera. But
The reality of the world is Reddit.
I want to ask Matt his opinion. We're talking about publishing now. You have a long history in publishing. If you were, would you start a media company today, digital media company? And if so, no, I'm just going to stop there.
I thought that was a private conversation.
I'm sorry. You just meeting me today. There is no such thing as a private conversation.
Yeah. Touche. I sold a publishing business last week. It's a publishing business that's been around for 20 years. in many ways had a lot of authority. The URL was mom.com. You would think mom.com would be something that could survive and thrive. And we found that it couldn't, and it breaks my heart. Great team, loyal team, tried, pulled every lever we could try to pull to make it work. But ultimately, the monetization machine of web publishing is broken, and I frankly, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure it's fixable. So would I chase that with another dollar? Absolutely not.
Well, let's switch away then from publishing and let's talk about. Let's go into the world of in the world of retail, right? So we're talking about. Let's use some use cases because again, we had the Fanatics conversation before. Elliot, what are you seeing on the retail side? Is there fear, excitement? Is there refreshed view of how to engage with consumers through GEO? Talk to us about that.
I think there's this topic of like agentic commerce, retail, or just like the future of commerce. Everybody's talking about one day like my agent's going to buy on my behalf from another agent. And I think that is kind of maybe the future we'll head towards. It's a little dystopian, but I also think
A little
bit. I think we're very far from that world. Like frankly, like we had ChatGPT go out, roll out instant checkout, and then they kind of pulled that back. And so we had a lot of frontier labs and models kind of trying out different things, and a lot of these retailers, kind of just they're kind of just waiting to see what happens. And I think they're cautiously optimistic, but super early innings.
And the reason I'm asking about retail, I'm going back and looking at my fun facts that Beth found for today, because I'm going to use these as much as I possibly can. Today, in 1902, Target was founded by American businessman George Dayton as good fellow, try good. Today, in 1902. So they've had, the reason I bring them up particular is retail has to continue to evolve or die. We talk about publishing. The evolution is hard, and this is a new moment, and I think there is concern and some excitement. So I'll pass the question down on, it doesn't have to be retail, but are there any verticals where you're seeing some really cool innovation or some excitement around AI and what it can do for their businesses outside of what we've already talked about?
Yeah, I'll share a quick example of where we're headed and how it can prove effective for a brand. So, we talked about sort of our entry point from the research and the insight side. So what we're able to do is, so we work with the Aruba Tourism Board. So tourism is 95% of their GDP. It is their lifeblood. They've gone through a cycle very quickly from under-tourism to over-tourism. And over-tourism creates a whole new set of problems. And those problems aren't going to show up in a focus group. You can't possibly survey 1,000 consumers and ask them why they're an asshole when they're visiting the island of Aruba. They're never going to tell you the truth. And so what we're able to do is do some audience segmentation work, and we've created agentic capability where we can throw those audiences into an agentic platform and use that as a qual study. And you'll get real answers. Now you've got to use a lot of data and science to make sure you can verify those answers, in which we do. But that's an unbelievable way for Aruba to get second-level insights into an audience to figure out what do they do about it. From a marketing standpoint, how do they market the island in a way where when visitors show up to the island, they're being respectful of the natives, they're being respectful of the infrastructure. That's become a huge problem for Aruba, and we're able to help them solve that rapidly through the deployment of agentic technology and effectively, because they can then go deploy that immediately into media.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I think travel's an interesting vertical because for some crazy reason, people are using LLMs to plan their entire trips. I'm looking at some of my people here that do that. I'm like, you're using Reddit to curate your trips. I don't know if that's a good idea. But in retail, we see brand building is still a hugely important thing. And another crazy thing that's happening because of all the AI, we're seeing kids go back to the mall. They go to the mall, they actually are going into stores and shopping. And so the discoverability of new retail brands, I think, is less on the LLMs right now. And we're moving back towards the reality, IRL. But how do you make somebody if they, I've seen that brand, let me go check it out in the mall, or let me go to the store, or let me go to that site. There's still a traditional marketing circle, but also the influencers and the social and all that kind of thing. So I still think retail is all the things and is using AI to target better, but it's still all of the things traditionally.
Do you see that, Elliot, in your data? I mean, what he's touching on is almost like the joke of no one gets past the first page of the search results. Is
Yeah,
that
that's
replaying
often.
itself in
Yeah,
the LLMs?
I mean, people will do research, and then they'll just click out. So it's like super hard to attribute. Like if somebody's like researching, what kind of pants to buy and for Cannes Lions, and like you just get a couple recommendations, like it will just stop there, and then they'll maybe just like go out, open a new tab, do some shopping, and the decision's already made. So it's kind of the landscape is changing, and like I think Jeremy, you also mentioned like the IRL component. Like Mark Cuban just bought like a events company, right? Something like that. So like I think it's kind of, it's going to be AI, or it's going to be like community based, like super local, grassroots, like IRL kind of marketing.
Okay, here's one for you guys. If Google defined the last era of digital, who or what defines the next?
Cognitive.
Expand.
Reddit.
It's Aruba. It's the Happy Island.
We weren't prepped for this. We weren't prepped for this question.
Listen, this can be right off the top of your head. We can skip it and come back, and it can be your hot take at the end.
I mean, I still think it will be Google to an extent, because like I mean they are so crushing, and like I think for the past year and a half there's been a lot of FUD around Google, like with the introduction of OpenAI, Anthropic's models, et cetera, and like everybody's like freaking out, but then like Google has like kind of pulled itself back into the conversation. Yeah, I think if anything, the one company that won't be really a part of, like the FANG or like the premier like tech companies will be like a Facebook or like a Meta. Like I think they'll start to maybe taper off a little bit. But
I love a hot take.
My hot take is I think in real life is moving. Digital is moving back into real life. I think we're going to be off our devices a lot more. I think SpaceX is going to be the reason for it. I mean, actually, in all seriousness, Starlink is an amazing product. I don't know if anybody's had the chance to use it. It's going to become ubiquitous very quickly. I know our phones are a little bit ubiquitous, but because Starlink can be ubiquitous in a way that all devices can use it, I think we're going to be. I think there is a deep need by young people to get out of their devices at this point, and I think that is going to be the next big phase of society.
do you have shares?
I got like 10 shares.
Okay,
and
nice.
I asked
You
for
gotta
more, and they gave me 10.
You got to pump your bags a little bit.
You mentioned this before. I think I'm going to put visibility, influence, and discovery. We're going back to AI. What is the role today of AI across those three? Is it a connective experience? Is it a fragmented experience? Is it going to get better? Can what any of you are doing help the consumer across that?
Well, I'll just quickly say how we help the marketer get visibility. Okay, in a efficient way, but in a broad way also. So broad targeting, we'll call it, and that's our tagline is the brain behind the brands. And I think after 11 years of doing this, we're finally really realizing that capability. We take in first-party data. We take in that reality of who's interacting with your brand, who's buying your brand, who's coming to your site, who's walking to your store, who's buying your toothpaste in the store, and we understand what they're doing, that user journey and who they are, and then we can now take that algorithm that understands that and predicts the next purchaser or the prospect, and we can target them across social, email, display, online video, and CTV. So all of the touch points now where advertising can be available and messaging can be available, you can have a central AI brain. And I think that's what we saw 11 years ago, we thought we could build, and I think that's going to be the big thing for marketers in the future.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's connectivity. and it's I think brands are awash in data. They have been for quite some time, and I think AI can allow brands to start really connecting disparate data sources, both their own first party as well as external data sources. And if they can do that, what becomes powerful is you move from the what to the why. And we also see some power in AI in getting the why into the hands of decision makers and actually accelerating decisions. We come in from a market research background where we traditionally showed up and handed you a book of insights and said, all right, here it is, go do something with it. And the bar, AI allows us to totally relevel that bar and say, no, we're going to show up, and this insight is going to allow you to make a decision. And these are impactful decisions. So I think that's pretty exciting. It requires connectivity.
I have one more question and then a fun one to wrap this up because everybody's hot and I hope everyone's hydrating. What role will human judgment continue to play in AI-powered marketing?
Fundamental, massive role. Judgment will not go away.
Yeah, going back to that marketing engineer role that we're trying to, kind of push out, it still requires so much context. I think, any previous marketer that was good at their job will know what good or bad looks like in a world of, 10x more content, way more AI schlop, as we all call it. And so having that previous context and understanding what good looks like will, I think a human in the loop will always kind of be the state at which we use AI. It's kind of like how, if you've ever used like Cursor or any of these like coding tools, like you're still prompting the machine to do the code writing for you, and then you're basically going in and like, I don't write code, so but you're going in and you're seeing what looks good and like you're accepting and improving the changes.
At this point, I think human interaction and decision making is still extremely important. I'm not going to say that sometime in the future AI can't do it almost as well as we can, but today it's not really synthesizing new ideas. It's taking what's out there and it's summarizing it and doing a little bit of reasoning, still making a lot of mistakes. But I think that there's something in humanity understanding the connection. There's a human connection that's very hard to understand through written words and video. And marketers need to connect. And so taking that information and synthesizing it and making it into a connection, I think is still very key.
It's tricky. And what we like to say is garbage in, garbage out. But with AI, the garbage doesn't smell. And it's very articulate. And without some human overlay, you can walk yourself into a serious problem. And it's harder than ever to detect the truth. And I still think that's going to be a fundamental need.
I do think it's easier to test ideas. Okay, so you can be wrong. You don't want to be wrong in a big way. And now I think because of all the digital capabilities, you can test, you can create things faster with AI. You can test those ideas. You can even, focus group a ton of different ideas if you really wanted to do it that way. So the creation of the ideas is easier. The testing is easier, and then you can invest bigger.
We're winding down the panel, and we're on day 3 of Cannes, and we're all still melting. But before we get off the stage, I would love to know, you didn't get prepped for this one either, so here comes a curveball. When you go home to wherever your homes are, I think you're all New York, Miami, okay. So you're going home to hot too. How do you know that Cannes was successful for you? What's one thing that you're like, yeah, this rocked?
For me, it's meeting just one new person that taught me something, but also we end up being able to connect and work through something new. And that's a guarantee, frankly, I can.
Yeah, I agree with that. Any meaningful connections that can come out of there's so many people here, so just like any intimate, dinners, et cetera, connections through that. But I think also like Profound is AEO, AI search is a very nascent industry, and we're trying to figure out how we can come back to Cannes in a more meaningful way. So we're trying to figure that out too.
And Matt?
I think can during a World Cup is an unbelievable recipe and cocktail, and so I'm just hoping to get out of here with less than 2 hangovers. This will be a home run.
How are you doing on that so far?
I'm holding at 1, so I just got to get through
Okay,
tonight.
so we're
The
midweek.
games are late. The games are late.
Yes.
Everyone, please thank their panel. They're tremendous. Talk to them after if you have follow-up questions.